Hello, my name is Deb Bowen, and I would like to welcome you here today. I'm grateful you get to meet honored guest and Anna from Ukraine, who's coming to us live from Belgium. 20 years ago, I created an intergenerational writing project I called A Book by Me. Students 18 and younger have been meeting someone from the World War II generation, hearing their story firsthand, and then writing and illustrating it for future generations. World War II veterans, Holocaust survivors, women who served in the Army, the Navy, and the Marines, and now there are some Rosie the Riveter stories as well. Many of the subjects are in their 80s or 90s and 100s now, and there is a short window of time to meet them and preserve their stories. This work has been done under the covering of the Jewish Federation of the Quad Cities since it began in 2003. From the start, the director of the Federation, Alan Ross, was kind to encourage me and introduce me to seasoned educators who helped me in the development stage. Actually, those same people still support A Book by Me today. I've stepped up and established a nonprofit organization that I called Understanding Works. Our goal is to distribute book sets nationally and internationally so students can better understand history. Senior living homes also enjoy these storybooks that promote conversations among the residents. I couldn't have done it without the Jewish Federation, the educators, and the support that support this work, and Doug Chop and the students at the Entrepreneurial Center, The Edge, at Augustana College. Each year, college students assist in the publishing of the books with their graphic design skills. But here we are, and today there's over 100 storybooks in the collection. Most interviews have been done with our subject and the students at a kitchen table. Over the years, I've seen many aha moments when the senior is speaking. There's always been great educational impact for the students who participated. The pandemic changed the way we met, but fortunately, many seniors were used to talking on Zoom with their family members, and A Book by Me interviews became virtual for that season. Our first virtual interview was with a 100-year-old World War II veteran in Wisconsin. Like others before him, he was proud of his young author and artist. Another hat I've worn for over 2 decades was working with high school age exchange students from developing countries. After his exchange year, one alumni from Ukraine named Lev Barenboim visited his grandmother in Israel. He felt her story of escaping Romania during the Holocaust would be a good fit for A Book by Me. Since he was too old to write and illustrate it, I began thinking of other options for a young author. Then last spring, the war in Ukraine began. I was communicating with many of my former students, including Lev. It was so hard. One girl was hiding in a basement of her apartment house with her mother and little brother for weeks. Another was asked by her father to drive her family to Poland, and she was frightened of being in charge while he stayed behind to fight for Ukraine. Their problems were so much bigger than my wisdom, but I listened and I helped where I could. Just 1 week before the war started, Riva's grandson Lev got his first job in a bigger city, so he moved and he set up his apartment. Then the war started, and he sent me inventory of all the food he had in his cupboard and asked for my advice on how to stretch it out. It was surreal to think that this young man was all alone in a strange place in these circumstances. All of these kids have eaten at my dining room table in the safety of rural America, and I could not imagine what they're going through now in the dangerous world they live in. Shortly after that, my world collided with young Anna, who was struggling with all that was happening in her country. We did some fundraising together to help get orphans out of Ukraine. I noticed she was a good writer, and I asked if she would like to tell Riva's story for young readers. We had Riva's voice since my student Lev had sent me his grandmother's memories and translated them into English for me. Anna accepted the task, and she titled her book, Riva's Reality. Riva's story included leaving her childhood home in Romania. Little did we know that Anna's own reality would be writing this story in 4 different countries as she fled Ukraine. My student, writing about a refugee, became a refugee herself. An amazing educator named Erin Maurer from Iowa called me and learned about Anna's book project. If I could be young again, I would want to be taught by Erin and his teaching staff. They are amazing. He volunteered his teachers and the kids at Forest Grove Elementary to jump in and illustrate Riva's story. Artwork is a big part of each project. This storybook provided not only lessons from the past for this classroom, but Anna's current events, which confirmed what we were all watching on television. It had amazing impact on these students. It had amazing impact on all of us. Our large team had just one goal: to honor Riva's story. I wish those kids in Iowa could be here today, but they are in school right now. Also, Riva's health has declined and she cannot be here, but her family will watch later on replay. One thing I know that Riva and Anna made a lasting impact on these students' lives in Iowa. I believe her story will impact each person who reads Riva's reality. Before we begin, I'd like to share that you can ask questions in the chat, and we hope to have time at the end to answer all the questions. Right now, I would like to introduce you to Alan Ross of the Jewish Federation of the Quad Cities.
Thank you, Deb. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that partial funding of this program comes from the Norman Cohen Family Holocaust Remembrance and Education Fund at the University of Northern Iowa. I would also like to acknowledge the Edge Center at Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois, which is hosting this webinar today, and especially Andy Shearhouse, who has gone way beyond the call of duty and has been unfailingly patient and helpful to us. Thank you, Andy, very much. It's now my honor to introduce a short video made especially for this webinar of Holocaust survivor and international educator Marion Blumenthal-Lazan, who is the author of 4 Perfect Pebbles, an unforgettable memoir of the devastating years that shaped her childhood. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Marion Blumenthal-Lazan, Holocaust survivor, author, and speaker. I've witnessed what an outstanding impact that Bowen has made to students with their innovative Book by Me project. It is important, it is vital that we educate today's young minds regarding the Holocaust, the darkest period in modern history. And in the same vein, I would like, on behalf of us all, to congratulate young Anna of the Ukraine and students from Iowa who wrote and illustrated the story of survivor Riva Birnbaum, who now lives in Israel. Do you know that there are 130 storybooks created by kids, for kids? You may want to avail you a class set for your own class. Thank you, Deb Bowen. Thank you for your untiring, enormous efforts in helping pass the legacy of the Holocaust on to future educators.
Next, I would like to introduce Erin Maurer from the AEA in Bettendorf, Iowa.
Thanks, you, Deb. And so I'm really humbled and honored to have an opportunity to speak with all of you and be part of this awesome opportunity to talk about Riva's life, as well as connecting here a little bit with Anna and everybody involved. And, as we gather here today, it's not just to remember the 6 million Jewish lives lost during one of the darkest periods in human history, but I think it's also a celebration of the indomitable spirit of those who have survived and the generations who carry their stories forward. And as I think back about the work we did with Riva's story, I think about the incredible 6th grade students that are on this call here today as we're telling the story of a 100-year-old World War II French resistance fighter, Michelle Mockers, and they're phenomenal educators that have taken on the journey to bring these stories to life. The biggest idea that I see time and time again is that it's the power of story, no matter what we're talking about, education or life outside. And as I was thinking about what in the world I would say here before Anna goes and wows us with her story and magic and genius, this word keeps popping up in my head as well as I think about the journeys we've been on, both through telling Riva's story and as well as talking about telling Michelle Macher's story currently, is this word ambiguity. And it's a big word. And really the ambiguity means to hold 2 ideas at the same time. And I think these students and everybody involved weren't holding 2 ideas. We were holding 3 ideas. We were holding one idea of what is Riva's story and how do we respectfully and honorably tell that story to someone who had an incredible life. We then balanced another idea of this wonderful opportunity to be able to work with Anna. And we're unfortunately seeing history repeat itself as we were exploring the life of Riva through the experiences of Anna. And then we had this third idea of ourself. Who are we as people? How do we build confidence in ourselves? As many of them didn't see themselves as artists. We weren't sure. We couldn't see ourselves maybe as a published author or writer. And we were balancing our own self-identity. And to me, that is the power that comes from these opportunities that Deb and the Book by Me team have been able to provide so many students and people across the globe. And we live in a day and time where, quite frankly, we move at a rapid rate. Society moves so fast. There's so much to do in classrooms and education. And so I think as we are in this space here together today, is to remember to see the space in the song, to take the time for those minute opportunities that are the most powerful, the things that maybe don't always wow and impress, but that's where the real learning, the real self-development comes to light. And Laureen Adams has an impressive quote that I think hits and resonates so much with this session today, as well as the work that needs to happen in classrooms and the work that A Book by Me provides students that I've seen last year and again this year is we need to foster a humanizing pedagogy. Students need to feel safe, cared for, and seen. And this is true not just for students, but for the educators and really for everybody in all our communities. This psychological safety feeling is something that's more important than ever before. And the way we do that is through human-centered design. And time again, if we had all the time in the world to talk about it, we had to sit and sift. And the incredible educators and the students can attest to this, is this space of not knowing. And these are the stories that we are telling. People were living really, really difficult lives in this sense of not knowing. And as we are trying to craft these stories, we got a small sense of that, of not knowing the solution of what this is going to look like, not always knowing the answers, and not only knowing if we're going down the right path to bring these stories to light. And so I think a lot of this comes around in these spaces with the incredible people that brought this work together, is how do we process through that space of not knowing? And so it comes back to the idea of story. And there's lots of stories of Steve Jobs, and this is not a story of him, but he seems to always permeate so many presentations. But back in '94, where most of us probably weren't even born or alive, there was an exchange in his work office where people were talking about the most important people, most powerful people in the world. And Steve Jobs interrupted him when he was toasting his bagel and said, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and an agenda of an entire generation to come. This here is the power of authentic work and student genius. And last year's students telling Riva's story, this year's students telling Michelle's story, they have transformed those narratives into a powerful graphic novel that showcases the triumph of the human spirit over unimaginable adversity. And through that, they have become some of the most powerful people that I know by taking on the reins to tell a story. And so this is what I want to kind of wrap up with, is my own little story for you to think about. And it's called What If? And it's really just a story of provocations for us to think about the importance of A Book by Me, the 100+ books that have been told, and the countless stories that still need to be captured. And so what if there were people in the world who are passionate about capturing stories of the past to ensure they were not forgotten? Luckily, we have that with Deb and her team and everybody involved to bring these stories to life. And what if in classrooms we had leadership, building admin and district admin that empowered and trusted educators to lead transformative learning experiences for students? They gave them the space and the permission, and got out of their way to move beyond the low-level thoughts of some standards and really dive deep into the human experience for deeper learning experiences. And what if, as a result of that, the foundation of trust between school leaders and the educators then unlocked full potential of learning experiences? So last year, Mrs. Campbell, Mrs. Weiss, and this year with Mrs. Reyes joining the crew and the incredible Michelle Lastine, we have people, a community of educators that are taking on the challenge to allow students to sit in these powerful experiences to create stories and magic and go beyond just the memorization of facts. And what if that value of the process over product leads to more deeper, meaningful experiences? When students go beyond merely memorizing facts and immersing themselves in the human story, when they become the active participants in preserving collective history, this is real learning. When they ensure that the legacy of survivors like Riva is never forgotten, And by engaging in this profound work, they not only learn about the past, but they connect it to the present and are able to draw parallels, in this case, to courageous people like Anna, who is currently working through all those things and helped us solidify why this work is so important. And what if that collaboration then expanded beyond the classroom walls? We've referenced Anna, we're going to hear from her in a second, but then bringing in other experts, local museums to talk about World War II propaganda and what that looks like, working with comic experts to give us feedback and techniques to make sure that we're telling the story to the best versions of our abilities. And then what if we then redefine student accountability, where kids aren't doing work because they need a grade or they don't want a missing assignment or detention, but because they care, because the work matters, because they want people like Riva and Michelle to be proud, and they want to make sure that this work is fosters this productivity and genuine engagement, not just in the learning, but for the authentic audience as well. And then we connect that with having the space to be able to embrace the human story. And this is a passage from our educator guidebook. And this comes from a reflection we had with Mrs. Weiss and ourselves. I remember this vividly, this experience where we had this exchange with Anna, and the kids were more quiet than normal. Like there's a volume of quiet, and then there's a different energy of quiet when something is resonating at a true emotional human level. And that happened in our experience with Anna. That story, her story mattered, which then catapulted us for the need to make sure that Riva's story matters to more people as well. And as we think about that, then it's giving the students an authentic audience, giving them a sense of purpose and real world impact, speaking at conferences, presenting the work to Riva and her grandson, and to Anna, and to many others. And just recently at an art gallery exhibit where one of the students was there signing the books, and she had this to say.
Yeah, my name is Mia Stone. I help work on the book Riva's Reality. My classroom for school. What impacted me most was what Anna was going through when she was helping us edit our book, and the fact that she lived through 4 different countries in a week's worth of time.
So what if the learning from the human story can transform our understanding of history? And to me, this is one of the beauties of this work. It didn't transform just students, it transformed the educators and everybody involved, where we have an official published version of Riva's Reality of a book by me. We have an educator version that goes into the students' thinking. And then the educators work tirelessly to create an educator guidebook to help other educators learn and figure out how to recreate these experiences within their own local school spaces, because the impact was so great that we know that more people need to be involved in these opportunities. And what if the human story could transform our own understanding of ourselves? And I've said this already, but there was bridges that were built between these 6th graders of last year and connecting to Anna, that she resonated with them so well, that then helped us build bridges back to the story of Riva that gave us a whole different sense of understanding and empathy. And so this is the potential that we have to change the trajectory of education, to be courageous and unyielding in our pursuit of authentic work and celebrating student genius and the power of human connection. This is the moments of bringing people together to spark inspiration, to bring this into classrooms and schools and communities. And as we think through some last couple thoughts is, helping us not just tell the story of Riva, but to understand our own deeper understanding and looking through her life challenges and her journey and hearing about it from Anna, to then apply that to ourselves with whatever we're going through in our own personal lives. These are just a couple of the voices of students with tons of reflections and ideas, but the one that I want to call out is that I have a voice that will not only impact Riva's life, but everyone who reads about her life too. Being given this opportunity also gives me the chance to show what I'm really capable of, and to show that even if others can't speak up, I will. There is a sense of empowerment there that goes beyond any standardized test. And I think this attests to the work and these opportunities. And so if we were to combine all these elements and thread them all together in one experience, what do we have? We have a book such as Riva's Reality. We have the work that is continuing on today with the current set of students telling the story of Michelle Mockers. This work impacts generations far and wide and for everybody involved. And so I like to close with this. What if you acted today to bring authentic learning, human connection, and the power of story into your own life? How would that shape your world? And whether you're in education or you're beyond, or you're working in your own personal life, the question that I have for you that I want to leave with you today is, what will your story be? What is your legacy? What is the impact that you're going to have? Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello, I'm Stephen Gaze, the director of the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Education at the University of Northern Iowa. It's been a pleasure to be involved in putting this program together, and it's my special pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Anna Voroseva. As you know, Anna has two remarkable stories to tell. One story is the one she was commissioned to write, the story of Riva Ulitsky-Barenbaum's survival of the Holocaust. The other is about Anna's own experiences between the time she agreed to write Riva's story and the time she completed it. I won't say too much else because these are Anna's stories to tell. So now I'm very pleased and honored to introduce Anna to you. Anna?
Thanks, Stephen. I feel very honored to have been able to write the story about Riva, and I'm very glad that it's out there in the world for people to read, and for kids in schools to learn, and especially in the format that it is in, because I think it's, as Aaron said, it has a big impact on the children. So now I would like to tell you Riva's story. Riva Barenboim was born on August 23rd, 1933 in Romania. It was the same year that Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany. Her father Isaac was born into a large family where all the children except him were girls. And Riva's mother Bella had great education. She knew Russian language well, and she spoke French, and she was a great mathematician. The worldwide Great Depression that started in 1929 was also present in Romania, and it destabilized the country. So the early 1930s were marked by social unrest, high unemployment, and strikes. At that time, Riva's father also participated in dangerous underground work against the government. The German-Soviet War started on June 22nd, 1941, and at 11 o'clock, it was announced on the radio that a war had begun with Germany. The Nazis bombed every day, and while hiding in the cellar, Riva's parents decided that they should leave the city and go to the village. Her dad had a cart with a horse, so he took them to a village near Balti, and they stayed there for several days. But not for long, because one day the neighbor told Riva's mom that the Germans were in a nearby village, and she estimated that they would be in their village in about 2 to 3 hours, so they had to leave very quickly. So Riva's family decided to head to the city near the banks of the Dniester River, and they spent the night at the house of a peasant woman. In the morning, they crossed the river on a ferry, and after that, they got on a train. But Nazi planes were bombing them, and they had to jump off the train and ran into a field where they would have to lay on the grass in the fields. When the bombing ended, they got back on the train, and they traveled for about 2 weeks until Riva's mother said that they had already traveled far enough and they could stop. So they got off the train at the Lisky station in the Voronezh region, which is in Russia. Then they were taken in carts to a Soviet farm Sovkhoz in the Limanovsky district. The people there settled them in a club where the whole floor was covered with straw, and that was where all the evacuated people slept. Then they gave them a room in a hut in which there were only 2 beds, a table, and 1 stool. So that was their home for a few years, and they lived there until September 1944. In 1944, the Germans were driven out and the cities were liberated. Riva remembers when her mother came home from the club in 1943, where November 7th was being celebrated, which is the day of the October Revolution, and she joyfully informed everyone that Kiev had been liberated. The city of Balti was liberated in March 1944, but until the fall, fighting continued in Moldova. Kishinev was released in August, and Riva's family finally began to think about returning home. So they traveled on the road for more than 2 months, arriving in Balti in late November. Riva's mom then enrolled her and her sister in school, Riva in the 4th grade and Ina, her sister, in the 6th grade. She was an active pioneer and then a Komsomol member. After high school, Riva decided that she would study English just like her sister. In 1956, Riva got married. She and her husband lived in Kogureshte, which is a small village in Moldova, for 7 years. In 1958, Riva gave birth to her son, Vladimir, and in 1961, Yakov was born. Riva then got a job in a school in a Ukrainian town, Zaporizhia, and she worked there for 24 years until retirement. She raised both of her children in Ukraine, and one of them still lives there. Riva herself now lives in Israel. I wrote this book during the very first months of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It was the time when thousands of people were fleeing their homes with children because there were daily bombings, and staying in their homes was incredibly dangerous. During the first few weeks, all everyone did was watch the news, and all we could see were destroyed homes, people hiding in their basements, bombed cars of more than 7 people. Sometimes they tried escaping, but Russians purposely shelled the road that they were taking. When I left Ukraine in March of 2022, I took a bus which got us to the Ukrainian-Polish border, and its destination was a refugee camp for Ukrainians. There were about 200 people in that big building, and most of them had nowhere to go. They didn't have a place in Poland. Their home was in Ukraine, and a lot of them fully lost their home. They wouldn't have anywhere to return after the war is done. It was especially very sad seeing the little children going through this, because they didn't know what was going on. They didn't understand why they were going through this horrible time, why they were moving to some different country where they don't know anyone, where they don't know the language. And I imagine that's exactly what Riva felt when she was fleeing her home with her family. Yeah, so it's very sad and crazy to think about the fact that there are still such things happening in the world right now, even when we thought that this would never happen again. But Riva's story had a great impact, not only on me, but also on the students that illustrated the book. When I was working with the students from Iowa, I could see how invested they were in the story, how they would always ask questions and try to make sure that the illustrations that they were making that would fully correlate with the story. They tried to, we tried to work together as much as we could to make sure that we bring Riva's story justice. One of the illustrators, Ali Lockie, said, and I quote, "Working for Riva is like capturing a moment in time to share with the world. Although preserving a story comes with great responsibility, it's a chance to bring more justice to all of the stories buried beneath layers of complexity. By being able to peer through a new lens, I'm able to understand history on a different level. World War II for some people wasn't just a time period in a textbook, it was personal." I completely agree with Ali here, since no one in my family had ever shared any stories of World War II, and I don't remember anyone telling me any personal stories, just like Riva's story is. So I think it's very important to teach children these kind of stories in school, but not just make it a chapter in a book, because no one will probably remember it, but actually make it a fun and interesting project, just like Aaron does. Another student, Kelly Bowman, says, "It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that allows me to share the story of someone else's childhood that was taken away by war. This project has allowed me to reflect on myself, what I have, and the things that some people have never experienced. Riva's story is so mind-blowing and gut-wrenching, and it makes my stomach twist and turn at the thought of living through it. It is truly horrifying what Riva and her family has gone through, what people in my country are going through to this day, and what people in many other countries are going through, the things that we don't really talk about and don't really know. So I feel very honored that I got the chance to do this, to work with the amazing students, to work with Deb and everyone that's had some kind of part in this. Yes, it just, this book reminds me every day of just how fragile life is, and how much we need to cherish the things that we have, the people that we know, and yeah.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for sharing your heart with us. That was very special. I see a question already. How much did you know about the Holocaust when you began writing Riva's story?
Not much, really. I learned about it from school, but history was not my thing. So yeah, really not much. I probably learned more from the internet, or people going to places that represent the Holocaust in some way. But I never heard such stories, and I'm very glad that I have heard Riva's story and got the chance to work with it.
It is different when you hear it firsthand, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So how do you feel that Riva's and your stories are similar, and how do you feel that they differ?
I feel like I can't honestly say that my story is very similar to Riva's, because when I left Ukraine, I lived in a pretty safe place, so I didn't have to leave as how would you say that? I feel like there are more people in Ukraine that have to leave because of the reason that their home is completely destroyed. My home wasn't destroyed, and I don't feel comfortable saying that I fled Ukraine. I just really don't. But I can definitely see how a lot of Ukrainians can relate to Riva, and it's very unfortunate. I never thought that this would happen, and yeah, I don't think anyone thought that this would happen, but yeah, it's crazy to think that it's still happening in 2023. Such things that just it's hard to think about it.
It is. Is everyone in your family still safe?
Most of my family is. My grandparents and my father, they live very close to the front line. They live in the east, and they had to leave the city and go to the village to, even though it's not particularly safe there, they can always hear the shellings. And I remember a few months ago, they would show me how there were tanks going right outside their home, which is just bizarre. And I mean, it's nothing new for them, because they've gone through it from 2014 when the war started, but it's much worse now. But yeah, I call them once in a while and try to make sure that they're okay, but they'll get through it. Everyone will, and everything will go fine.
Riva's grandson Lev shows me pictures too and videos, and it's hard to see. I know, must be
Yes.
even harder for you. Do you communicate often with your relatives is a question, and I think you're going to be seeing some relatives soon. So why don't you tell the folks about that?
Yes, I'm going to see my mom and sister very soon. On Sunday, actually, we're meeting in Poland, and I was not that long ago. I talked to my to one of the colleagues in my university, and they said that Poland is kind of the meeting point for all Ukrainians that like live in Europe, and some of them live in Ukraine. That's where everyone meets. So yeah, I'm very happy to see them.
I'm sure. I'm sure. And siblings? Do you have siblings? I can't remember.
This is my sister.
My sister.
Yes, she lives in Poland.
Mhm. And what are you studying in college in Belgium?
I'm studying computer science.
Very good. If anyone has any more questions, please type them. I just want to go back to something that Aaron said about the subjects. For years, I have seen just such a look on their face after an interview. I can't even really put it to words except that it's almost like a glow. I saw it when Aaron and his students this year were interviewing Michelle Mockers. I saw this look on his face. He was just beaming. And I've seen that across the table for years and years as the kids ask good questions and are, you know, have that determination that you had, Anna, to like do this story justice. And then Aaron's kids and I would jumped in with that same determination, and their energy was so powerful. You're absolutely right. It inspired me, and I believe it inspired you too.
It's a huge responsibility. You never want to take something from the story that isn't there or leave anything out.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you hope to live in the future?
Honestly, good question. I would probably honestly, I'm really interested in Asia. I would love to live in warmer countries. I've always wanted to live outside of Ukraine, which is quite ironic. And I had the chance to live somewhere outside of Ukraine in such an interesting time. It didn't exactly go to plan, but yeah, I would probably want to spend a few years back home as well, just exploring the world, right?
And someone's asking where you learned your English.
By myself. It was something that I knew I needed, and turns out I did.
You didn't have it in school?
I had it in school, of course, but I think like 90% of people would say that they didn't learn English from school. It's just, you learn it by yourself mostly.
The students from Ukraine and other countries too that I worked with, the former Soviet bloc countries, earned a scholarship called the Flex program. And Anna you want to tell them about your experience with the Flex program?
Yeah, it was quite unfortunate, to be completely honest. I think it was 2019, I'm not sure. It was a very exciting time because my mom told me about this program a few years before I got into it, and I said like no, and then one day I decided to go, and I won the scholarship, and then COVID started. I did not go. I was going to go to Montana. I would communicate with my host family that I was supposed to stay with for a long time, and yeah, it was quite unfortunate that I wasn't able to have the same experience as other people did. But I mean, there's always a reason for everything, and I'm glad that everything worked out the way it did.
Well, I'm certainly glad that our paths crossed. I had students that didn't get to come as well, and it was hard. It was a bitter pill to swallow, I remember. It was rough. Um, I have Beverly is saying, my daughter teaches inner city kids in 5th grade. These kids seem to completely lack empathy. How do you think we can get children of today to really understand and empathize with not only the past, but today's war in Ukraine? And we might need more than you to answer this, Anna. What would you say to this?
I would just say learning the stories of other people, hearing their stories, personal stories, and not just learning from the news, because I mean, of course, it's like there's so much there that you're kind of confused about everything. Just trying to find people who have gone through things, and yeah, stories.
Yeah, I agree. They're powerful. Stories are powerful. Anyone else want to say anything about that? Aaron, Alan, Stephen?
I mean, the only thing I would add to that is just, how it's that lack of empathy. How do we get it to resonate with their own lives? What are the conflicts they're dealing with in a local lens, and then how do you start to build that out and then bring in those voices? I mean, I know take Riva's work, for example, where we didn't get a whole lot of opportunities, say, like, to meet with her virtually. We had to document and we had to do research, and the kids understand that World War II is important and those things. To me, and the educators that were part of that, would have other maybe ideas to share too, is the bridge, as I said earlier, was Anna. They met somebody that resonated with them. Anna connected with them. She made sense to them. Anna, you were younger. I mean, you were a student. They understood that. They had brothers and sisters, maybe family members your age. And while they may not understand the war in Ukraine, all the details, they could feel emotion and empathy in your voice. They had lots of questions. And they were then able to build parallels to Riva's story. And we dove in and not research to gather facts and statistics, but research to unearth the human element of Riva's life in the context of World War II. And all of a sudden now that started to make more emotional connections to them, to really want to understand more about Riva and her journey, and then balancing that back with touching points with Anna. And so while that's not a direct answer necessarily to the 5th grade thing, is how do we start to build those human connections, allow their voices to be heard, help them see what is that you're grappling with, and scale that out to other people's stories. There's as the teachers at Forest Grove that work, it's how they do business. Like they've set a stage from day one of a culture in their classrooms for exploring humanity and really humanizing pedagogy and practices. So when this comes around, it's not the first time they've had to think about those elements, but it gave us an opportunity to do it, kind of like live and in the flesh, and really have this accountable piece in the end. What was a book, and working with Anna, we wanted to do right by her words. Anna crafted the words, and we wanted imagery to not just to do well for Riva, but for Anna's hard work as well. So there was all this accountability that just comes down to being a good human. I don't know. So I think just looking for those networks and constantly bringing those voices into the fold of the learning process.
You need to unmute, Stephen.
Well, let me ask while he's unmuting, where can somebody buy
Okay.
Anna's book if they want to?
Riva's Reality is on Amazon. You can find it there just by searching Riva's Reality.
Yeah, okay, I'm unmuted, and we'll send the link to Understanding Works and other ways to find out more about the A Book by Me series when we send the recording, as soon as that's ready. I just wanted to say, Anna, you said that you felt that the students were very invested in the project, and what came up over and over again in what you said, what Aaron said, what you've said, Deb, is that they really felt a responsibility to get it right. It wasn't just learning for the sake of something else. It was getting it right and doing justice to Riva's story, to your story, Anna, to the other children, the other students who are going to read the story. And that's why it mattered so much to everybody. So it's a remarkable example of what Aaron described, people getting involved in stories as a springboard for understanding things and people.
Yes. Yes. And Beverly, I just had an experience. A synagogue had a group of kids act out a Jewish survivor story. There's been a team of the educators that I work with. We've been creating some readers' theaters, and some of the feedback from those students who acted those out said it really made their hearts beat fast what the survivor experienced, and it put them in that person's shoes. And I think that's where empathy begins sometimes, right? When we really start understanding what somebody has gone through. So next question, Anna, what was the hardest thing about creating Riva's story for school kids?
Probably just not making it too hard to understand. Because while I was writing it, Deb was so kind to kind of make it easier for me to edit, and she would work on it, on the text before I did. So we already had some good drafts. Yeah, I would just start to add some things that were not too difficult to understand, and the words that are not too difficult to understand, because it's made for kids, so you don't want to go with some extravagant language that no one will understand.
Yes, you were good at that. Riva's PDF that Lev sent me was pretty thick, and Anna was pretty upset about what was happening in her country and having to leave so suddenly. So I kind of spoon fed her some of the parts of it, and later she realized when I sent her the whole package that I did that intentionally, just because I knew that it would be overwhelming, and I knew that she needed just a few bites at a time to get her thinking about what the next page would say. So I definitely coached her a little differently than I normally do, but we did it together, didn't we, girl? So here's another question. How did you react on the day Russia invaded Ukraine?
It was a very strange day, as probably it was for everyone. I remember the night before, I saw on social media a very interesting post saying something about Ukraine starting the mobilization. I'm not sure how it's meaning that like men cannot leave Ukraine because of war. I mean, what other reason would there be to stop men from leaving? So I didn't think anything about it. And then in the morning I woke up, I don't remember what it was, but I think it was also on social media. I saw something that like, well, war started. And that's not really something that you wake up and you expect to see ever. Like a message, well, hello. It was rather strange. So yeah, and that day everyone said that well, you need to get groceries, you need to get water, you need to get your windows, like you need to put tape on your windows just in case like it might protect you from the shock wave when a bomb hits somewhere close. So almost every window was kind of taped in some kind of way. Yeah, so, but in my city, and I'm the kind of person that doesn't really panic. So I was more like, okay, like, all right, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna end soon. But then we started like learning how can we hide in our apartment in the best way to, like, in the case that there's a bomb somewhere, how to better hide in your apartment just to survive. You have to get to basically you need to be as far from you need to get 2 walls in between you and the window. And I mean, that's just a crazy thing to learn about, right? But yeah, and then just everyone got used to everything. And the crazy things that were in the very beginning now has become such a norm, unfortunately. But people deal with things.
That's exactly what Lev said about his grandmother, because I was concerned about Riva, seeing everything on the news. She has a son and 2 grandsons still living in Ukraine. And he said, unfortunately, she's become used to it living in Israel, and she settled down. So that's the tragic truth, right? For you and for her. Here's another question. How are Riva's story and Anna's stories of hope?
I think it's just about stories about strength, about going through things that are difficult, and seeing the end in it, the hope, the good in it, learning the lessons, growing through it, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so. As we were going through the Q&As, I had a call from a woman I met in Texas when my husband and I were down there recently, and she was from Germany. She was a small child in Germany during the war. And she wanted her story told through a book by me, and I arranged for her to Zoom for the very first time with a student from Iowa, and she is having her story told right now. That's why she's calling. But one thing she said to me that was so powerful, she said, I hope you're telling the stories of the Holocaust survivors. That was so important to her. And that really just blessed my heart. In fact, she ran to the back of the house and grabbed a book, The White Rose, I think is the title of it, a story that I'm familiar with, but she wanted to give that to me to share with students. And I thought that was so sweet of her. So it was just one of those like unexpected, really powerful conversations for her to bring up the Holocaust and make sure that I was doing their stories justice. So I hope that I am.
That's amazing. You definitely are.
Thanks, sweetie. So Stephen, do you have anything to add?
No, except to thank you all, Aaron, Alan, Deb, and Anna. It's been a great experience.
Yes. Alan?
Thank you, Anna, for what you're doing, what you've done, how you've survived, and your plans for the future. You're an inspiration for students all over the world, in our community and everywhere. And keep up the great work you're doing. Your English is great. Glad you learned it, even if you had to do it yourself. And I want to thank Aaron, Stephen, Deb, and everybody involved, the Web Guild, for this program. And it's going to be taped, and hopefully many more people will see it. And so thank you again, everyone. Appreciate what you've done.
Yes. And Anna, there's one more question I just saw pop up. How did you start writing Riva's story?
Well, right after doing the grant, you said, why not? And I said, why not? It's a great
I think
idea.
I think it helped take your mind off of things a little bit, didn't it?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I too would like to thank everyone for coming. And if anybody wants to learn about a book by me, on the landing page where you registered, there's an opportunity for a happy hour on Wednesdays, I believe. So if you want to register for that, that would be good. And Did I not tell you that Aaron Maurer was an amazing educator? Great job, Aaron. Great job, Anna. Great job, everyone. I so appreciate everyone being here. And with that, I think I'm going to say thank you for coming and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.